Welcome back to the PLO vlog. I'm Wayne. Thanks again for the recommendations. We are in for our now usual $400. Let's get into it. All right, so I'll get things started here with ace queen 6-5 double suited in the small blind. There's a middle position limp. I check my option. Big blind goes ahead and makes it 15. Middle position player calls. I call. So we're going three ways to a flop. Flop comes king jack 6 with two spades. I check. Original raiser checks, and the middle position player checks. So we're going to a turn. Turn brings a 5 of hearts, bringing in the backdoor flush draw. Now it does obviously give me bottom two pair, but in PLO, bottom two pair is almost never good. I mean, even in Hold'em, I've heard people complain about bottom two pair, and PLO, you can imagine it's even worse. So I check. Original raiser goes ahead and bets 30, and then the middle position player makes it 100. And like I said, bottom two pair is never pretty much going to be good. I mean, of course, here I do have my two outs or two tens that don't bring in the flush for the nuts, but I decide to fold here. All right, so here I look down at ace, 10-6, single suited to the ace under the gun. And just to give some context, I'm in seat 9, and the player in seat 1 to my left is very aggressive. I believe I played with him the past couple sessions before this as well. But my plan is to limp, as I usually do, and then go for the back raise. And then having an aggressive player on my left makes this a better move in my opinion. So I go ahead and limp. Sure enough, he does oblige us, raising to 20, and then there's 4 callers back to me. So I decide to stick to the plan, of course, and make it 140. We get 4 callers, so we're going 5 ways to a flop. Flop comes ace jack 5 with 2 diamonds, and obviously only one move for me to make. I go ahead and push my remaining 220 in, and gets back to the last couple players. The one player's kind of looks like he's calculating his odds. He assumes I have what I have, and after tanking for a little bit, he decides to fold. Then the last player says, I would have rather had your hand, and he folds as well. So pretty good result here, considering I only had a couple $100 going into that pretty big pot. So we take it down. So here I look down at ace queen 10, single suited to the queen in middle position. When it folds to me, I open a 20. We get 1 late position caller, and both the blinds call. So we're going 4 ways to a flop. Flop comes king 7-2 with 2 spades. When it checks to me, I check as well, and late position player bets 50. He gets 1 caller from early position, and I go ahead and fold. Here I'm under the gun in a straddled pot when I look down at ace king 10, single suited to the ace. I limp. Player to my left makes it 50. There's 3 callers to me, and I also call. So we're going 5 ways to a flop. Flop comes 8-7-5 with 2 clubs. I go ahead and check. When it checks to me, original raiser bets 120. He gets 2 callers behind, and I also make the call. So 4 ways to a turn. Turn comes a pretty awful card in the 4 of hearts. When it checks to me, I check. Original raiser bets 400. Late position player pushes for around 600. And then the player to my right who's short stacked, he calls all in, and back to me. So I believe if I had some additional equity to go along with my flush draw, I would have been more likely to call here. But chances are at least one of these players has a couple of my outs, which makes my odds even worse. So I decide to fold back to the original raiser, who of course calls for the additional couple hundred, and they're going to a river. So I captured the end of the hand here. The player to my right, who is short stacked, he turned over ace queen 8-7, so he flop top 2, filled up on the river. He wins the main pot, and then the late position player had jack 10 6-5, so he had the straight. And then the player to my left, who is a crazy maniac that I'll play a hand here in the next little bit, he had queen 9-9-8. So I think he had 2 clubs, and I guess he was drawing to a gutter. So that's how that hand ended up playing out. Here I look down at 9-9-8-7, single suited to the 9 in the big blind. Under the gun makes it 20. There's 1 middle position caller, and I go ahead and call. So we're going 3 ways to a flop. Flop comes queen jack 10 with 2 diamonds. I check. Original raiser bets 40. Middle position player calls, and I call. So we're going 3 ways still to a turn. Turn brings a king of diamonds, and action checks through, so going to a river. River brings a 3, and I don't know what really compelled me to do this, especially considering the player that is the original raiser. He was the maniac I mentioned earlier that was in that large all-in hand with queen 9-9-8. So safe to say the guy doesn't like folding, but I decided to bet 120, and let's listen to see what happens after that.
Can't be worse than mine.
Bet?
Cannot be worse than mine.
That's true. Not much better.
It cannot be worse than mine. When he said, how did that turn card go to me?
So show them A9.
I had a 7 card straight, yo.
A9! Oh shit!
I couldn't eat it.
So it might be hard to determine from the audio, but both players, as soon as I bet, were talking about how bad that turn card was for their hands. The player to my left showed ace king, and then the late position player showed pocket jacks, and they both ended up folding. And I wasn't going to show because I don't really like to give out free information, but the player to my right who wasn't in the hand, he saw that I was bluffing with the 8-9, so he kind of egged me on to show it, and I did, and gave everyone a good little laugh, since it's not so often that I bluff, but happy to get one through. So here I look down at king 6-3 double suited under the gun. I open a 20, we get 4 callers, so we're going 5 ways to a flop. Flop comes ace 10-9 with 2 hearts. I check, late position player bets 60, and it folds to me. I decide to fold as well. Here I look down at ace queen 9-6 double suited in the cutoff. There's 1 limper. I make it 25, and we get 2 callers, so we're going 3 ways to a flop. Flop comes queen 9-3 with 2 diamonds. When it checks to me, I bet 60, and only the player to my right calls, so heads up to a turn. He only has about a pot-sized bet left, so if the turn comes clean, non-diamond or straight card, my plan is to bet him all in. And it doesn't come to that, as the turn brings an 8 of spades. When he checks, I just decide to check back and evaluate a river. River brings an 8 of hearts, so now a lot of the straight draws beat me, either with the straight or trips, and he decides to pot it. And I think for a little bit here, but I don't really see many hands that I beat besides a busted flush draw, so I fold. Here I look down at ace king 9-7 double suited in a straddled pot in the cutoff. There's 1 limper to my right. I go ahead and make it 45. We get 3 callers, so we're going 4 ways to a flop. Flop comes queen jack with 2 clubs. When it checks to me, I check, and the late position player checks as well, so still going 4 ways to a turn. Turn brings an 8 of diamonds, giving me the backdoor flush draw. And then the small blind decides to lead out for 180, folds to me, and don't really think calling here is going to be a great option. Usually calling with flush draws on paired boards in PLO is going to be a pretty big mistake, especially when it's not the nut flush draw. So I fold, and actually the late position player folds as well, so he takes it down. Here I look down at ace 5-3 single suited to the ace under the gun. I limp. Player to my left makes it 25. There's 3 callers, and I call, so we're going 5 ways to a flop. I decided not to back raise as I did earlier with the aces. Couple reasons. One, obviously that first one ended up going 4 ways. It ended up working out for me, but I don't really want to go multi-way here with ace 5-3. It's not going to play that well post flop, especially being out of position. So that's why I decided to just call and see a flop. Flop comes jack 10-8 with 2 spades. Player to my right bets 30. I call. Then the player to my left, who's the original raiser, makes it 170. There's 1 caller to me, and I decide to call. So we're going 3 ways to a turn. Turn brings one of the worst cards in the deck. It's the 7 of diamonds. I check. Original raiser bets 400. Other player tank folds, then back to me. Had the other player called, I definitely would have been getting a lot better odds to call for my flush. But once he folded, I definitely wasn't getting the right price. So I decided to fold and pick a better spot. Here I look down at ace king jack 8 single suited to the ace in middle position. I open 20. We get 3 callers, so we're going 4 ways to a flop. Flop comes 8-3-2 with 2 diamonds. Small blind leads 85 into me. And here, having the top pair blocker and obviously the nut flush draw, I figured that I just have to kind of go with the hand. If I'm up against a set, then that's unfortunate, but obviously I still have a lot of equity. But there's definitely still some 2 pair and straight draw combos that I'm going to be doing pretty well against. So I just decided to pot it, and player to my left pushes the back to the small blind. He goes ahead and tank calls, and then back to me just to call my remaining chips off, and I call as well. So we're going 3 ways to a run out. Turn brings a deuce of hearts, so pretty awful card. River brings 10 of clubs, no help to us. And the player to my left immediately turns over pocket eights for the boat. And the other player mucks, and we, of course, muck as well. So he's going to take this one down. What's up, guys? Wayne back here with you. So just finished up, and the session today was, I mean, it was a really good table. The action was great. There was a couple players I had never seen before that were really driving the action. A lot of pots were 6, 7 ways. There was actually one hand, I was on the button, I had 3 jacks in my hand, so I folded, but every other player called a 3-bet of $70, 8 ways, so I don't know if I'd ever seen that before. But unfortunately, didn't really get a whole lot of hands. I did get the aces early, ended up limping under the gun. Aggressive player to my left, raised, I back raised, got 4 callers, ended up pushing for a little bit over $200 on the ace high flop. Took it down, so pretty good result there. But really after that, didn't get a whole lot. I did get the ace king king 10, flopped the flush draw on the ace 7-5, ended up calling a bet. Turn brought a one-liner, and then very similar to that ace 5-3 hand towards the end there, same thing. I ended up flopping the nut flush draw on a straight connected board. I called a bet. Turn brought another one-liner to a straight. So when he pushed there, I did quick math in my head, and I didn't feel like I was getting the correct price to call, so I ended up folding there. I certainly could have played it differently. You know, I could have obviously back raised there, but just based on how the table was going, you know, ace 5-3 single suited, it's not really going to play that great post flop. So, you know, I don't really want to take on 3, 4, 5 opponents with that hand, so that's why I decided to flat. And then the last hand there, obviously raised with ace king jack 8, flop top pair and the nut flush draw, get it in, and somehow the aggressive player on my left wakes up with pocket eights there. So I mentioned blockers in the last video, so you know, unfortunately the case cards are going to still hit sometimes. I did happen to get the one bluff through earlier against the same aggressive player, which you know, was cool. That's something I don't do too often. Happy that worked out. But you know, besides trying to get an occasional bluff in or two, you really can't do much at it, especially at a table that crazy. So I was in for 400, out for 0. If you guys enjoyed it, please hit the like and subscribe button. If your viewing experience could have been better, please let me know how down in the comments below, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.